John opened his eyes to a soft glow that filled his vision. When he sat up, he saw high walls made of a glassy material, painted with swirling colors. He felt a strange hum under his feet. He could not remember how he had come here. He pushed himself to his feet and looked around. The place looked like a great hall. Long rows of seats lined both sides of a wide path. Each seat was filled with beings wearing robes of different colors. Their faces were calm and curious as they watched him. Above, a dome of shining glass arched over the hall. Light streamed through it in green and gold patterns. John's single quotes heart pounded. He tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. He touched the side of his head, hoping to find a wound or mark. There was nothing. He could not explain where he was or how he arrived. At the far end of the hall, people gathered around a raised platform. On it stood a tall figure in a dress that seemed to glow with soft blue light. Her hair was pale silver and her eyes looked like stars. She stood beside two older figures, a woman wearing a crown of pale metal and a man in robes of deep purple. John felt their eyes on him through the distance. A low murmur ran through the crowd, whispers in a language John did not know. He watched as a guard stepped forward. The guard was tall and wore armor that reflected the light. He spoke to another guard, then both turned and walked toward John. The longer the guard walked, the louder John's fear grew. When the guard reached him, he spoke in a clear voice John could barely follow. The words were not Earth words, but John felt their meaning. Come. The guard motioned John forward with a steel-gloved hand. John stood frozen, unsure what to do. The guard repeated his command. John swallowed and took a hesitant step, every eye in the hall fixed on him. He felt the weight of their stares, like cold fingers pressing on his skin. He tried to find courage. He thought of his home on Earth, of the warm sun and the faces of his friends. He held on to that image and moved again. He walked down the path, between the rows of seats. He saw faces with smooth skin and shades of green, blue, and pale gold. Some had extra eyes, some had fins on their arms. They all wore the same calm expression. None shouted or rushed him. They only watched as John reached the platform. The Queen and King stood silent. The glowing woman stayed at their side. The guard guided John to a marked spot on the floor. It was a circle outlined in silver light. John looked down at his feet. The circle seemed to pulse under him. He looked up at the glowing woman. She gave a small nod. John felt a surge of fear. He wanted to explain. He wanted to tell them it was a mistake. He opened his mouth and tried to speak in a normal voice. I am sorry. I don't know why I am here. The king raised a hand and the hall fell silent. He spoke in a gentle voice that John could somehow understand. You have come as the chosen one. You are to wed our daughter today. John's heart stopped. He lifted his head to look at the glowing woman. She was still calm and held out her hand. John took in a sharp breath and whispered, Wed. Me? The queen spoke next. Her voice was soft but firm. Yes. The prophecy named a human as our daughter's partner. You are that human. John shook his head. He felt sweat on his brow. I can't, he managed. This is wrong. I don't belong here. The queen's eyes were kind. She stepped forward and placed a hand on John's shoulder. Her touch was cool and gentle. We understand your fear, she said. But you will learn why you are here. John looked at the glowing woman again. She lifted a hand and beckoned him closer. He took a step and then another. His legs felt heavy, but he moved as he approached. He saw the princess's eyes shine with curiosity. She smiled softly and said in his mind, to his very thoughts, I am glad you are here. John froze. He realized he heard the words in his own language. His mind raced. He did not expect telepathy. He cleared his throat. Hello, he said. His voice sounded small. I am Astra, she told him. You have nothing to fear. A wave of relief washed through John. He met her gaze. In that moment he decided he would learn more. He would find a way to speak his truth. But he also sensed that this day would change his life forever. He took one more breath and nodded. Around him the light in the hall brightened. The ceremony was about to begin. John woke before dawn. Soft light filtered through the tall windows of his room. He sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the quiet hum that seemed to come from the palace walls. He rubbed his face and thought of the day ahead. He would learn the rites of the wedding. He would meet the people who lived here. A gentle knock sounded at the door. John stood and opened it. A servant held a tray with simple breakfast, warm bread, a bowl of sweet fruit, and a cup of steaming tea. John nodded and closed the door. He carried the tray to a small table by the window. He looked out and saw pale morning light across the gardens. He took a bite of bread. It was light and soft. The fruit tasted like honey. As he ate, he thought about the ceremony. He wondered what role he would play. Would he have to speak? Would he have to perform a ritual? He felt both curious and nervous. A soft sound made him look up. The door opened and a Strab walked in. She wore a simple gown of pale green. Her hair was tied back with a band of silver. She smiled at him. "Good morning," she said in his mind. John felt the words in his own language. He raised his cup in greeting. "Good morning, Astra." She came closer and looked at the tray. She picked up a piece of fruit and ate it. John watched her. She had a calm grace about her. Her eyes shone with faint light. "Today you meet my parents and the council," she said. "They will teach you the bond ceremony. You will learn the steps and the words." John swallowed. He set his cup down. "I will do my best." He followed her out of the room. They walked down a corridor with smooth walls and glowing panels. The translator device on John's belt lay quiet. They passed a guard who bowed. Astra nodded. John tried to bow but hesitated. The guard smiled and motioned forward. A flight of stairs led to a balcony outside. The morning air was cool. John breathed it in. He felt awake. Astra guided him to a courtyard. There 2 figures waited, Queen Orla and King Farron. Orla wore robes of soft white. Farron wore deep green. They both smiled kindly. "Welcome, John," said Orla in John's mind. "We are pleased you join us," John bowed. His mind echoed, "Thank you." He stood and looked at both of them. Farron spoke next. "Today you will learn our union rites. This knowledge will guide you through the ceremony. Follow each step with focus. We know it may feel strange, but you carry our hopes." John nodded. He felt weight in his chest. He remembered his home station, where he was alone. Now he was part of something grand. Orla led him to a marble table. On it lay robes, bracelets, and small bowls of colored powders. A soft light shone on each item. "First," said Orla, "you must wear the robes of unity. They symbolize our bond." John picked up a robe of pale blue. He held it against his body. Astra helped him slip his arms through the sleeves. The robe fit loosely. It felt smooth and cool. John looked at Astra's robe. It glowed faintly silver. Astra stepped back and allowed him to wear the robe. John turned to face her. She smiled and held out a thin bracelet of woven metal. "This is the bond cuff. It will rest on your wrist. Wear it until the ceremony is done." John took the cuff and felt its light weight. He closed it around his wrist. A soft glow spread from it up his arm. He gasped. Astra watched. "The bond cuff links 2 hearts? It shares the promise of unity? You will feel its pulse when she stands by your side." John flexed his hand. He felt warmth in his palm. He nodded. Orla spoke again. "Next, you will learn the words of promise. Repeat them in your own mind as you stand before the council." Farron showed him a scroll. The characters were shaped like stars and waves. "We have translated the words for you," said Orla. She tapped a panel, and the translator glowed. It displayed simple letters on a screen. John read, "I pledge my life to stand beside you, in peace and in trial." He read it again, slowly. He memorized the rhythm. Astra repeated the words with him. John heard them in her voice and in his mind. He felt the words form in his chest. When he was ready, Orla led him to a large chamber. It was circular, with benches rising in tiers. At the center stood a pedestal. On the pedestal rested a small flame that burned without smoke. Orla gestured to the flame. "This is the flame of truth. When you speak your promise, the flame will glow brighter if your heart is true." John stepped forward. He knelt before the flame. His heart pounded. He cleared his mind and thought, I pledge my life to stand beside you in peace and in trial. He spoke the words aloud. His voice was clear and honest. The flame flickered and grew. It shone brighter than before. John watched it with awe. Orla smiled. Your heart is true. John stood and turned to Astra. She came to the pedestal. She spoke. Her promise in the same words. The flame pulsed in time with her voice. When both had sworn, the council rose. They were figures in robes of deep blue. One by one, they stepped forward and touched the flame. John watched as each spoke a blessing. A low hum filled the chamber. John felt warmth in his chest, spread through his body. He looked at Astra. She smiled and took his hand. Outside the chamber, Astra guided John to a balcony. The sky was high, and open he saw ships gliding among the clouds. He felt small and safe. Astra said, Now you know the rights. You have sworn your promise. The wedding draws near. John nodded. He felt proud. She paused and reached for his hand. He squeezed hers. We will face this together, she said in his mind. John smiled. He knew she was right. As they walked back to the palace, John thought of his home. He thought of the portal that brought him here. He felt a strange gratitude. He may have come by accident, but he had found a purpose. They returned to their rooms. Astra handed him a small book. This has more details if you wish to review. She smiled. John took the book and opened it. The pages held drawings of the dance moves and the final exchange of rings. Astra rested her head on his shoulder. Rest now. Tonight you dine with the council. Tomorrow we wed. John closed the book and wrapped his arm around her. He felt calm. As he lay on his bed, he thought of the prophecy. He thought of his promise. He smiled and fell asleep, ready for the day of celebration and the bond that would unite two worlds. The day after the bond ceremony, John woke to a soft light filtering through the curtains. He stretched and looked over at Astra. She was still asleep, her breathing even and calm. John smiled and slipped out of bed. He dressed in a simple robe of pale blue, the one he had worn for the promise. He tied his hair back and stepped into the hallway. Outside, the palace was alive with preparation. Servants carried decorations of glowing ribbons and lanterns that floated in the air. Musicians tuned their instruments and rehearsed soft melodies. John paused and watched as a team arranged a long table with dishes of strange fruits and pastries. The air smelled of spice and sweet honey. Astra found him by a window. She wore a pale green robe that matched the garden's leaves. Her silver hair glowed in the morning sun. She smiled. We have the dance rehearsal today, John, she said in his mind. The final steps before the wedding feast. John nodded. He felt both eager and nervous. I understand. I will do my best. He followed Astra to a large chamber at the palace's east wing. The room was wide and empty, with a polished floor that reflected the light. At one end, dancers in light robes moved, in smooth patterns. A tall instructor guided them with gentle gestures. Astra led John to the instructor. The instructor bowed and extended his hand. John shook it, feeling a slight warmth. You have learned the bond ceremony well, the instructor said. His voice was calm and rhythmic. Now you must learn the unity dance. It will show your bond to all who watch. John watched as Astra moved with grace. She stepped forward and took his hand. We will do this together, she said. John felt confidence in her words. Astra began with a simple step. Step forward, turn to the right, and lift one arm. John followed. At first, his steps were hesitant and uneven. He stumbled. Astra paused and offered him a gentle smile. Focus on the music, she whispered in his mind. Feel the beat in your heart. John listened. The music was soft but steady. It felt like a slow heartbeat. He closed his eyes and tapped his foot. He pictured his pulse in time with the rhythm. He opened his eyes and stepped forward, turning smoothly to the right. Astra helped him straighten his posture. They practiced the steps again. Step back. Turn left. Extend both arms. John felt the robe sway. He learned to move with lightness. The instructor guided their footwork with a wooden staff. pointing where to place each step. For 2 hours, they rehearsed. John's legs grew tired, but he kept going. Astra stayed patient and encouraging. When they made a mistake, she laughed softly and whispered a correction. At last, the instructor nodded. "You are ready? Rest now and prepare for tonight." John bowed. He felt relief and pride. He walked with Astra to a small lounge where a bowl of cool water and towels waited. He dipped his hands and face in the water. He let the coolness wash away his sweat. Astra dried his face with a towel. She handed him a glass of fresh juice. John drank it gratefully. He felt a warm glow in his chest. "Thank you," he said aloud. Astra's eyes shone. After rest, they walked. Through the gardens, the palace grounds were alive with life. Birds with metallic feathers sang in the trees. Glowing flowers opened to the sun. John felt peace surround him. Astra led him to a quiet bench under a canopy of vines. They sat and watched the sky. The 2 moons were high, one silver and one pale green. John thought of his home and the single moon of Earth. He felt both sadness and joy. Astra spoke softly. "My people watch our union with hope. They believe a human will bring new strength. You have done well." She touched his hand. John felt a gentle pulse from the bond cuff. "I want to understand your world more," he said. "Tell me how your people live." Astra smiled. "We weave our lives around the stars. We honor the light that guides us. From generation to generation, we pass our stories and our songs. In times of war, we remembered our bond ceremony to keep hope alive." John listened. He imagined long nights of song and the glow of fires under the sky. He thought of Earth's people, divided and fighting over small things. He felt grateful for this chance to learn unity. As they talked, a messenger arrived. His robes bore the emblem of 2 interlocking circles. He bowed and held a scroll to John. Astra took the scroll and read. She smiled and looked at John. "It is an invitation from the Council of Worlds," she said. "They will attend our wedding feast tomorrow. Ambassadors from many planets will come." John's eyes widened. "So many people?" he asked. Astra nodded. "Yes, we must greet them and dance in front of them. But they come in peace." John nodded. He felt both excitement and pressure. He thought of the steps he had learned. He thought of how Astra had guided him. Astra placed a hand on his shoulder. "We will face them together," she said. "Your heart is true, John. That is what matters." John smiled. He felt courage build inside him. He stood and offered his hand. Astra took it. They walked back toward the palace. The sun was high and warm. John felt ready for the next challenge. As they entered the hall, the messenger bowed again and left. Servants approached with new robes for tonight's feast. John accepted his robe, a deep blue cloak trimmed in silver. They felt heavy but important. Astra wore a gown of pale gold. She looked radiant. John felt his chest tighten with pride. They prepared for the evening. Tonight would bring ambassadors, dance, and the chance to show their bond to many worlds. John took a deep breath and met Astra's eyes. She smiled and said in his mind, "Together we shine brightest." John closed his eyes and nodded. He was ready. Morning light filled the chamber as John and Astra woke. Today was the day of the grand feast and wedding ceremony. John stood before a mirror of polished metal. He wore robes of pale blue trimmed with silver threads. The bond cuff on his wrist glowed gently. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. Officials arrived to escort them. Astra wore a gown of pale gold that shimmered in the light. Her hair was arranged with silver pins shaped like stars. She turned to John and offered a small smile. John nodded and offered his arm. They walked through the palace halls. Servants bowed and cleared their path. John felt proud and nervous. They reached the main square where guests gathered. Ambassadors from distant worlds stood in colorful robes. Human merchants from Earth Station watched with wonder. John felt the weight of many eyes. A great table was draped in white cloth and filled with fruits, breads, and dishes of bright colors. Lanterns floated above the table, casting soft light. Musicians played gentle tunes on stringed instruments. Astra stepped to a raised platform. John stood at her side. The chief advisor, Lauren, spoke words of welcome through the translator. John listened as Lauren praised the joining of two worlds through this union. John sensed respect and hope in the crowd. Then Astra and John were guided to the center of the square. John felt his heart pound. He remembered the bond ceremony lessons. He recalled the words he had sworn. At Lauren's signal, a hush fell. Torchbearers lit a ring of lanterns around John and Astra. The translators glowed on the lanterns, translating the ritual chants. John took Astra's hand. He felt warmth spread from his cuff up his arm. He turned to the crowd and spoke clearly. I pledge my life to stand beside you in peace and in trial. The translator repeated his words. A soft glow rose from the lanterns. John looked at Astra. She smiled and spoke her vow. I pledge my life to stand beside you in peace and in trial. Pulsed around them like waves. John felt calm. Astra's hand squeezed his. The glow faded but left a gentle warmth in the air. A drumbeat began in the distance. Dancers moved into the square. They wore masks and light robes. John watched as they performed. Astra whispered, "This dance honors the bond of worlds." John felt a stir of excitement. He wanted to join. Astra led him into the circle. He followed her steps. Step forward, turn right, bow low, rise. He moved with care. Astra guided him with soft words in his mind. A sudden shout broke the music. Guards shouted warnings. John saw figures dart from behind pillars. Rebels in dark clothes carried strange weapons. Astra pulled John back. They moved behind a column. John's heart raced. He saw guards engage the rebels. Beams of light and echoes filled the air. Lauren ran toward them. He grabbed John's arm. Come. You must help protect the princes. John nodded. He gripped the staff of a fallen torchbearer. He followed Lauren around the edge of the crowd. He saw a rebel aiming at the dancers. John stepped forward and swung the staff. It struck the rebel's weapon, sending it flying. The rebel staggered. Guards captured him. John felt his pulse. He looked for Astra. Astra fought too, using a small dagger. She moved with grace and skill. John realized she had learned to defend herself. When a rebel lunged at her, John stepped in. He blocked the attack with the staff. The rebel fell. The guards rushed in and secured the square. The rebels were bound and led away. The crowd cheered. John stood beside Astra, both of them breathing hard. Lauren approached. He bowed to John. Your courage saved many, he said. John felt pride. Astra slipped her hand into his. She smiled through dust on her gown. Her eyes shone with gratitude. John met her gaze and nodded. Lauren raised his voice. Our union is sealed by courage and trust. The crowd cheered again. Music returned. Dancers resumed their steps. Torches were relit. John and Astra returned to the center. The feast began anew. John sat beside Astra and shared a cup of sweet wine. They ate and spoke softly. Astra said, I knew your heart was true. John replied, I promise to stand by you. He took her hand. As night deepened, the final ritual began. Lauren held 2 rings, one of silver, one of pale blue crystal. He spoke words of binding. John placed the crystal ring on Astra's finger. She placed the silver ring on his. The rings glowed and the bond cuff on John's wrist shone brighter. John felt a surge of warmth. He smiled at Astra. She smiled back. Lauren declared them wed. The square erupted in cheers. Fireworks of light soared into the sky. John and Astra embraced. Their joined hands glowed. John felt peace and love fill him. Later, the guests came to offer gifts and congratulations. John accepted their kind words. He felt part of a new family. When the night ended, John and Astra returned to their suite. They stood on the balcony looking at the stars. Astra said softly, Our bond will guide our worlds. John wrapped his arm around her. Wherever you lead, I will follow. She leaned against him. They watched the lights of the palace fade. John felt hope for the future and joy in his heart. He closed his eyes, content in the bond he had found. Dawn broke over the palace gardens. John awakened to soft bird songs drifting through open windows. The air smelled of dew and glowing flowers. He sat up and looked at Astra, still asleep beside him. He smiled and slipped from bed, careful not To wake her, he dressed in robes of pale blue and silver trim. The bond cuff on his wrist glowed faintly. He stepped outside to the garden terrace. Cool stones lay under his feet. Lanterns hung from low branches, their light fading in the morning. Servants brought a tray with fruit and warm tea. John thanked them and sat on a bench. He watched the blossoms open in the sun. Each petal glowed with a gentle light. He thought of the ceremony and feast of the night before. He felt exhaustion and pride. A soft voice came from behind him. Astra stood with the same tray. She wore a gown of pale green silk. Her silver hair caught the light. "Morning, John," she said in his mind. He smiled. "Good morning as TRB. He paused. "Astra," she smiled. "Come, we have a journey today." John raised an eyebrow. "Journey?" Astra nodded. "The portal must be prepared. We will open it to send the message of our union across the galaxy." John felt both excitement and nerves. He followed Astra along the garden paths. They walked under arches of vines and stepped over pools of glowing water. Palace guards and workers moved aside respectfully. They reached a clearing. At its center was a tall obelisk carved with ancient symbols. Vines wrapped around its base. A platform lay before it with glowing crystals. Orla and Farron awaited them. The queen wore a robe of white embroidered with silver threads. The king stood beside her in deep green. Lauren, the chief advisor, joined them. Astra bowed. John joined her. The queen smiled. "Today we send the bond of our worlds through the portal," Orla said. "The crystals will guide the energy. You must stand together before the obelisk." John took Astra's hand. They stepped onto the platform. Lauren placed 2 crystals in holders on the obelisk's sides. The crystals glowed with pale blue and silver light. "Focus on your bond," Lauren said. "The portal will open when your unity is true." John looked at Astra. Her eyes shone. He remembered their vows and the trials they faced. He felt warmth from the bond cuff. Astra squeezed his hand. "We are ready." Lauren spoke words in an ancient tongue. The symbols on the obelisk glowed. Light shone from the crystals, winding around the obelisk like ribbons. John felt a hum in his chest. He closed his eyes and thought of Astra, her kindness and courage. He felt her thoughts in return. "I believe in us." The crystals pulsed. The vines around the obelisk glowed. A column of light rose from the platform and shaped into a ring of shimmering energy. John opened his eyes. The portal hovered before them. It showed stars and swirling colors beyond. Lauren spoke again. "The portal is open. Send your message." Astra stepped forward. She placed her hand on the light. John joined her, placing his hand over hers. They focused on their vows, unity, peace, and hope. A wave of energy rippled across the portal. The light brightened and then shot outward in beams. John felt the energy course through him. He saw visions, worlds watching, ships receiving the message, people inspired by the union. When the light faded, the portal closed with a soft sound. The crystals dimmed. Lauren bowed. "The message is sent. Your bond will be known across the galaxy." John and Astra smiled. They had done more than pledge their hearts. They had united worlds. After the ceremony, Orla invited John to walk with her in the gardens. She asked about Earth and his life before the portal. John told her of simple things: green fields, birdsong, the sky of blue without 2 moons. The queen listened with interest. She said one day she wished to visit Earth. John laughed softly. "I will show you." Astra joined them. The 3 walked under archways of light. Farron greeted them at a pond where glowing fish swam. The king gestured to the water. "A gift for you, John." He dropped a small sphere into the pond. The sphere glowed and sank. Moments later, fish swam around it, their scales lighting up in patterns. The sphere held memories of their journey, crystal images of the feast, the vows and the portal. John watched with wonder. The king explained, "We share our memories as gifts. Keep this to remember your new home." John accepted the sphere and thanked the king. He felt honored. As the sun climbed, John and Astra returned to the palace. They paused at a balcony overlooking the gardens. The palace shone in green and gold light. Astra said. Soon, you must decide. Will you return to Earth or stay? John looked at her. He felt a pull to both worlds. He thought of his old life and the new family before him. He took her hand. I will choose after I see Earth through your eyes. Astra smiled. Then we will go together. They embraced. John felt hope and excitement. He knew more trials and choices lay ahead. But with Astra, he had found a bond stronger than fear. The day ended with a small family feast. John found himself laughing and talking easily. He realized he had become part of something greater. That night, John lay beside Astra, thinking of stars and 2 moons. He slept with a peaceful heart, ready for the journey to come. The next morning, John woke to soft birdsong outside the window. Sunbeams danced through the curtains. He opened his eyes and saw Ilara beside him. Her hair caught the light. John smiled and rose quietly. Today was the first day of his new life. He dressed in plain clothes of pale gray and silver. Ilara wore a simple gown of light green. Together they left the suite and walked down the hall. Servants greeted them with calm bows. They stepped into the palace courtyard. The sky was clear. Guards stood at attention. At the edge of the courtyard, a portal shimmered. It glowed like a pool of water reflecting the sky. John felt a tight knot in his stomach. Elia saw his look. She took his hand. This portal will take you home, if you wish, she said in his mind. John squeezed her hand. He thought of Earth, his friends, his home station, the life he knew. He thought of this world, its beauty, its hope, and Ilara waiting beside him. He closed his eyes and breathed. I will stay, he said. Ilara's joy warmed his chest. They approached the portal. Ilara led him forward. His skin tingled as they drew near. He felt energy in the air. Look, Ilara whispered. John saw faces on the other side of the portal. Human officers from his station stood there. They wore concern on their faces. One stepped forward. It was Captain Hall. He spoke through the portal in John's language. John, we have been searching for you. You disappeared from the shuttle. We mean no harm. John's eyes filled with conflicting thoughts. He looked at Ilara. She nodded gently. You can speak to them, she said. John stepped closer to the portal and held out a hand. I am safe. He said softly, I choose to stay here. Captain Hall bowed his head. We understand. Your duty is to you. John turned to Ilara. He felt relief and love. They left the portal and walked through the gardens. Dew still clung to the silver grass, birds sang. John breathed in the fresh air. Elar guided him to a small pavilion by a pond. Its water was clear, and fish with glowing scales swam beneath the surface. Tell me of your world, she said. John sat and gazed at the fish. He spoke of Earth, the blue sky, the green forests, and the hum of cities. He spoke of the shuttle, the stars beyond, and the feeling of flying in silence. Elara listened. When he finished, she said, Your world has its own beauty. Perhaps one day we can visit. John nodded. He thought of the portal and the people on the other side. He felt hope for a bridge between their worlds. As the day passed, John joined Ilara in her duties. He helped plan the council's meeting for peace. Together they wrote letters to distant leaders. John found joy in this work. At midday they returned to the palace. A banquet awaited them. Foods from both Earth and Ilara's world were served. John tasted a bread loaf from Earth brought through the portal. Ilara tried a pastry filled with berries from Earth. They laughed. After the meal, Ilara led John to a balcony. She held a small box. She opened it to reveal a pendant, a crystal of pale blue light. This is the bond crystal, she said. It will connect our worlds. It holds a part of my people's hope. John took the pendant and placed it around her neck. She touched it, and it glowed softly. Thank you, she said in his mind. John felt his own pendant glow on his chest. As evening came, John and Ilara visited the Star Temple once more. The orb of memories glowed in the center. John placed his hand on it and saw a vision, the 2 worlds united in peace. People traveling through the portal in both directions, sharing knowledge and friendship. He turned to Ilara, tears in his eyes. We will make this vision real. Ilara smiled and held his hand. Together we can. They left the temple and walked under the twin moons. Lanterns glowed along the path. John paused and looked at Ilara. I never meant to come here, he said, but I am grateful. Ilara touched his cheek. Fate brought you to me, John. Our bond will guide many. John nodded. He kissed her softly. Hand in hand, they walked back to the palace. The night air was cool and calm. John felt peace in his heart. As they reached their suite, John looked at the bond cuff on his wrist and the pendant on his chest. He knew his life had changed forever. He lay with Ilara, listening to the soft hum of the palace. In his mind, he whispered, "Good night, my princess." Ilara's voice answered, "Good night, my prince." Under the watch of 2 moons, they closed their eyes together, ready for the future they would build.